All right. So is everyone able to see the agenda on the screen? Okay. So I just wanted to open it up and say welcome to everybody. And for those who just joined, we're doing introductions in the chat box since there are quite a few of us and we don't have time to go around in a circle to introduce. So introduce yourselves in the chat box. And I will hand it over to Marie, who's going to open up to who we are as a network, since this is our first meeting as a network, what we're about, what the council's about, and I'll let her take it from here. So I'll stop sharing and I'll give it to you.
All right, Miigwech, Sara. So I'm Marie Schaefer, and I'm a Anishinaabe and settler from Michigan, and currently doing a postdoc at Michigan State University looking at renewable energy and climate change. And I used to be, I was blessed to be able to work at SDI, the Sustainable Development Institute. And I was one of the folks that worked to create the council and create the network. So I'm really excited to see how we've grown. And I'm gonna actually share my screen and take us through our website. And I will actually share, can everybody see that? I can multitask. Maybe Sara, can you share the link to it too? It's just NICRN.org.
Yep, I can do that.
All right. So this is our website, and we are trying to update it. Sara has an intern that's working on that. So please, as we kind of just briefly go through this, keep in mind if there's resources or things that you would like to see that you're not seeing, or editing of any way, just I guess send Sara an email, not me. And we'll get those changes about. But there's, now that we have there's kind of two main parts I wanted to show is, so we have this about us, kind of looking at what is the Northeast Indigenous Climate Resilience Network. Kind of this is the area that we're currently covering, and we're having conversations because the Midwest kind of splitting off. And then we have currently advisory council. I'm pretending, if you didn't notice, to be Kyle, who is going to be speaking. I don't have the beard. So just ignore that part, but he was originally going to be taking us through this. But this is our council that's doing the structuring and the behind the scenes kind of work along with Sara. And then let me scroll back up. So that has a little bit of information about kind of the advisory council. And then this network is a little different in that it's broader. So it's participation that we're thinking of anybody that's working on climate change work with tribes, Indigenous folks in the Northeast. And the other cool thing that I wanted to show on the website that Sara's intern has been working on is these resources. So there's different tools that if you're in this space, you can access, like the Adaptation workbook and the BIA Resilience Guide. So there's all of these different tools that we're trying to find one place to have all of this information. Funding opportunities, and I think we're going to be talking a little bit about that later. Just like a point of reference, because we all work on different areas, but we share a way to share the resources and in one place. So if you have those different resources, please share them and let us know about them. And we have information on projects and events on here, the Shifting Season Summit, and then also information about the climate change and different issues related to climate change and how we're planning, examples of different climate adaptation plans that different tribes have done that you can click on and get some information if you're in that space. And I think, let me stop sharing. Sorry, that was very fast, but please check out our website, the NICRN.org, and let us know if there's resources or more information that we can put on there that would help with your work. And then basically, I think I was just going to finish up and say that we're really excited to develop this out further. So we started a small group of us about 2014, 2015, and this has grown. And so we're still figuring out the council roles and responsibilities, which is kind of that structuring, doing the website, doing the relationships and working on those relationships, and then this network of sharing resources within this network. And that's the main responsibilities of the network that has been envisioned so far, is just the space to share. And how do we create that space in a good way? So I think I hit all the points, Sarah. I tried to be Kyle a little bit. But let me know if there's anything else that I can share.
Yeah, so thank you, Marie, for giving that overview. I wanted to open it up to see if folks have any questions. I know we have some on here that have been part of the network or know a little bit about, and some people who are very new. So yeah, are there any questions or comments about the network, about the council itself? And we have Chris on here too, so if Chris wanted to add anything, please feel free to.
Also, well, since I'm trying to navigate two meetings at the same time, I'll just make a few comments and then I have to switch back to the other one. But so the comments I put into the chat box, I was assuming this was one of our council meetings where we've worked together over several years and just pulling together our ideas for this project. But I didn't realize this was that more expansive effort to bring more people in. So actually that shows how long I've been out of this project and not directly involved up to this point. I had started at the beginning with Marie when I was director at the Sustainable Development Institute at the College of Menominee Nation. Since then, I've taken on the interim president role at the college, and I can see that both Sara and Marie are doing an excellent job of continuing to advance the work. And so one thing I would note is that one of the visions we had for this network was advancing beyond just designing the region or the network based on the climate adaptation science centers or whatever other climate adaptation group or federal agency was in place. What we really wanted to do was focus on grouping Indigenous peoples and tribal nations that had context through language or living in similar ecosystems. We're trying to address climate issues from a similar perspective like that. And so I think the work that's been advancing is really, it looks really good, pulling those resources together for tribes that are just starting, or if you've advanced to a certain level, if you're sharing back for other tribes to benefit from. I think that's the whole purpose of the network. So just wanted to say appreciate all the work that you are all doing, and I hope Kyle gets better soon. So Waiwanan for signing in, thank you, and Kanani, and I'll see you around.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you much, Chris. Yeah, and I think this is a space, just to build off of that for just a second, is the whole goal of this space is to see those kind of opportunities and get excited about what each other, what our tribes are working on and what our organizations are working on. And then
maybe see some opportunities for collaborations, or at least get inspired that maybe something that you're stuck on, somebody else has already gone forward and figured out a path to get through that. So that was some of the original thinking and visioning behind this as well. So, miigwech.
All right. So, yeah, like I mentioned, this is our first network meeting. And so the structure of these meetings, we are looking to do quarterly. And so that'll give us a chance to bring things together for, upcoming events or funding opportunities. And then we'll also have different presenters for each of the quarterly meetings, one or two speakers, depending on the topics. And then any other business that someone from the network might want to bring up. And then we'll close. So this is kind of the structure as it is. And, if there's any feedback on, adding certain things, we are very open to those comments too. Are there any other thoughts or questions about who we are as a network or the website itself? Okay, I take silence as a no. If any questions do come up, feel free to put them in the chat. We also have comment boxes on the website as well. So if there's anything on the website itself that is perhaps inaccurate or that needs to be added, please provide those in the comment boxes. And I and my intern will update them as quickly as we can. So moving on, we wanted to talk about upcoming events in the region. So I have two on here, but I'll start with those. So the first one is the Northeast Climate Adaptation Science Center webinar series. So they have a webinar series with different speakers. And so the one coming up in March, on March 17th, is actually going to be from our PI at the College of Menominee Nation, Frank Kupka. And he will be talking about sustainable agriculture at the college itself. So I provided the link there. And then when the webinar information is ready to be provided, it'll be on the website itself. It has a brief description of what it's going to be, but they do have other webinars as well. So please check those out. There's some really great, upcoming webinars, and then also webinars that are archived. So take a look at that. And the next one on the list is our Shifting Season Summit. So let's bring that one up. And are you able to see the summit page on here? Okay. So this is where we're going to be putting all of our information for our Shifting Season Summit. So this summit itself was originally supposed to be October of last year, but due to the pandemic, we've pushed it to this April, and it'll be in a virtual space. And the dates are April 19th to the 21st, with a special Earth Day event that'll be on the 22nd. So this page itself gives, a really brief overview. For those who know students or in the college and university atmosphere, there is a call for student posters for any student working on climate-related work. They are able to submit their posters for a virtual poster session, and these will be due on March 1st, which is coming up. So, if there are students who are interested but can't make the deadline, I provided our email address down here if there needs to be an extension on that. So that'll be a really great part of our Shifting Season Summit. Our registration for the summit itself is coming soon. It's actually going to be opening on March 1st, so next week. And this will be open to the public for anyone who's interested in attending. We'll be having our draft agenda soon, and it'll be posted on this website as well. And then these are our partners for the Shifting Season Summit. A lot of them are on here today during our call. So are there any questions about those two events coming up? Or are there any other events people would like to share with the group? We've got a quiet crowd today.
Well, people are thinking of events if they want to share. I just want to say that Shifting Seasons, the speakers, not just because I am one of them, the speaker list looks really amazing. They're being invited, and this is the ones that I've gone to has been amazing opportunities for learning and sharing with other folks in this space. So I highly recommend it. Again, not just because I'm speaking, but come to the energy panel. I have to respond to Casey's invite, but yes.
Yeah, we have a great list of speakers, and this is our third Shifting Season Summit. So we're really talking about adaptation and implementation as our main theme for the summit. Casey, it looked like you had something to say.
Yes, thank you. Just wanted to share a couple things. The first one coming up, there will also be the National Tribal Leadership Climate Change Summit hosted by affiliated tribes of Northwest Indians, but this is a national summit. Session 3 is coming up. They've actually divided the summit up. This summit was also supposed to occur in the fall of 2020, but also due to the pandemic, it was put into virtual form. But it's been broken up over kind of more of a series. So session 3 will be April 1st. There will be more information and a save the date coming out soon. And perhaps what I can do is send that through the listserv or have posted on the NICRN webpage. So mark on your calendars, let's see, Tuesday, actually it's Thursday, April 1st. We'll get more information on that. Last thing I'll say about that is it's youth focused. So the key is youth engagement, high school, undergraduate, early career professionals, kind of a broad definition, if you will, of youth, but kind of the next generation of youth and people addressing climate change in the tribal nations space. So that's coming up. And one more I wanted to add is I know we'll have a quarterly meeting again coming up in a few months here, but I want to give people a heads up that we had also planned a tribal climate camp last year through USET and partners such as affiliated tribes of Northwest Indians, College of Menominee Nation Sustainable Development Institute. This has been also postponed, and we are working to make a virtual event available this summer. We are looking at mid-July, the week of July 11th through the 16th. Also with that, a save the date and updated information will be posted on USET's website. And I'll let everybody know on our next quarterly call, which I think will be May sometime, but I just wanted to give people a heads up on that. That's it. Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks, Casey. And we'll be sure to include those in the notes as well. So one of the things my intern and I are working on is creating a page on the website where we will be posting all of these recorded meetings as well as the notes as well. So if you're not able to attend one of these and like to see what we talked about in the last quarter, they'll be available for everybody to look at. Are there any other upcoming events that people would like to share, either in the region or outside the region as well too? Oh, I see a chat from Molly Johnson. Let's see. She said, not necessarily regional, but the National Adaptation Forum is in early talks for a tribal/indigenous adaptation track for the fall. They're forming a small subcommittee in March if you'd like to get involved. That sounds great. We'll be sure to put those in the notes as well. Thank you, Molly. Are there any others? Okay. Yeah, well, if there are any others that we would like to share with everybody, please feel free to email me or the Shifting Seasons email. I look at both of those emails, so either one works. All right, well, we can move on to funding opportunities. And I know Olivia and Catherine are both on the call today. So I will turn it over to Olivia first to talk about the Midwest CASC call for proposals.
Yeah, and I just realized, can I share screen, Sara?
Yep, just let me make you a host.
I'm just going to pull up and maybe advance through the slides kind of quickly in case you didn't have a chance to join the webinar.
Okay.
Now I have to find where it is. Okay. So if it's okay, I won't go into presenter mode because then I won't be able to see anything else. I do not like Zoom. We'll go through the highlights for our call for proposals. So really we're looking for responding to high priority management challenges and that there's really meaningful engagement between resource managers and scientists, and that it's going to inform action and improve our conservation outcomes. So I think we had a conversation about the Midwest CASC receiving money in fiscal year 20. We've been really slow to get going because we had challenges in the last administration. But we expect that solicitation for the hosts to go out in the next week or two. And just to recap on fiscal year 20, there was a lot of interest and we try to cut down at the statement of interest stage and sort of not make so many people go through the proposal, but there's a lot of interest, just to say that. And, we picked projects that are everything from walleye and bass and other fish species in inland lakes to prairie potholes to Menominee to Ozark shiners and harmful algal blooms. So we have a list of active projects. They are sort of slowly making their way to the national website, if you're curious where they are, as they get approved and the award gets processed. So statements of interest, you still have plenty of time, due March 19th. They're only like 2 pages, so it's really not too difficult. But we do, when we look for a statement of interest, we are looking for, the idea being solid, good sense of partnerships. Everything doesn't have to be worked out, but making sure it's within mission. It's not about it. We don't fund implementation activities, so like turning dirt, but the evaluation of adaptation certainly would be in scope. So this is a confusing call. For us, it's USGS centers and the Midwest CASC Consortium as eligible PIs. Of course, the Midwest CASC Consortium is to be determined. I know, confusing. So that means if you're a university in the region, just go ahead and put in especially if you are part of the Cooperative Ecosystem Studies Unit, which a lot of universities are. And most of our awards, a lot of our awards will have tribal entities receiving sub-awards. That's how it is now. We got the question, right, if a tribal entity was part of the Midwest CASC Consortium, it would still be a sub-award. We always go through the host. It just minimizes our workload. That's how much funding we have, 1.75 million for fiscal year 22 projects. So they would not start earlier than spring of 22, calendar year 22. I had to think about that. You probably saw me like reaching in the top of it. And then in terms of research priorities, if you go to the call, it has more about this. I won't go into too much detail, but those management challenges are listed. And then, yeah, just review the types of projects. So some synthesis projects, those classic vulnerability assessment, impact assessments, and then research in the design and evaluation of adaptation, and a little bit less on the sort of the physical climate responses. So I'll stop there. I know that was fast. Catherine will have similar information probably too, but we can have questions.
Olivia, if anybody has questions about eligibility, because I've gotten a couple of those questions, can they just send you a quick email, or is that okay?
For sure. Most of them are finding me these days. And email's better than call.
Olivia, is the presentation you did available to be rewatched, or?
Sorry, I forgot to record it. Yeah.
What about your slides? Are they available to share?
I can share those, yeah.
Okay. All right. So Catherine, did you want to talk about the Northeast funding?
Sure. Let me figure out. Can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Let me just do the share screen really quick. All right. Is that sharing?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm going to just caveat that Olivia covered a lot of the relevant information, so I'm going to go really fast. And then also, I'm a new addition to this group as of today, so I'll just give you an apology if it's not super polished here. But I'm relatively new to the Northeast. I'm the federal director of the Northeast and Southeast Climate Adaptation Science Center, and I'm based out of Asheville, North Carolina, but covering the entire new footprint of the Northeast and the Southeast. And recently moved over from Portland, Oregon, where I was with the Forest Service as the assistant director of the Pacific Northwest Research Station. So it's great to meet everybody. Let's see. So I think Olivia really covered our mission and the emphasis on applied actionable science, and that we're doing work with a variety of groups. I mean, particularly the DOI, the other DOA agencies, states, and tribal nations we work closely with and for these groups. And then there's a strong education and training program. And I think in the Northeast, everybody's familiar with the Strong Fellows program. And I think the big news is that we've had 8 regional CASCs, and hopefully in 2 weeks we'll have our 9th CASC with the Midwest and the Northeast. So what we're doing, and I think Olivia covered this pretty well, but there's funding both for the Midwest region and the Northeast region. So, sorry, let me switch to the next slide. So the Northeast CASC, with its new footprint, will primarily or entirely fund projects in our new footprint. But our consortium still remains the same, with the colleges listed here. And for anybody who's interested, Woods Hole has changed its name to Woodwell Climate Research Institute. So in case anybody else was confused when they saw that. But so again, the majority of the work that we fund or the work that we fund will be in the new footprint, and we're modifying the host agreement this year to reflect just the universities in our Northeast footprint. And Olivia, I think you covered eligibility, but for the Northeast, it's pretty much the same as it's always been. You need to be a CASC University Consortium faculty member or a scientist with the university, the USGS. And but we also really do encourage partnerships and collaborations with other organizations, federal, state, tribal nations, or tribal organizations. And I think most of you are familiar with the mechanism that you would partner with one of the PIs, and you can receive funding through a subaward with that principal investigator. So in FY22, we're looking at probably at least 1.25 million, possibly more. Oops, sorry. Again, projects within the Northeast CASC footprint. If you can submit a project proposal for up to 3 years and not to exceed 400,000, but for any of the longer duration proposals, we'd be looking for interim deliverables. I won't review the timeline. That's all in the solicitation. I'm going to skip over science themes in general and just talk about our FY22 research priorities. We have 4 areas that we're emphasizing this year, and the Northeast CASC is in the process of developing a new 5-year science plan, and we're building off the focus group efforts that Olivia and Dave Reed-Miller developed, and I'm just, as I'm onboarding, I'm working through that information and pulling together a team to develop a new 5-year science agenda. So our FY22 research priorities reflect some of the research themes that were identified across the focus groups, and it also reflects some gaps in our existing research portfolio. So basically, we're looking at evaluating effectiveness of adaptation actions and defining that very broadly. It could be on-the-ground field studies to demonstrate the effectiveness or evaluate the effectiveness of adaptation actions. We could do modeling studies to actually project and test the potential efficacy of evaluation actions. And then we're also looking at cost benefit in terms of different climate resilience strategies. And overall, we're looking at projects that have broad applicability across the region, but we do recognize that there may be some very place-based studies that fill a critical information gap, and we'd be open to those as well. And our second priority focuses on adapting existing monitoring programs to both better track and assess climate impacts, but also to modify those existing climate programs where possible to better detect climate impacts. So I don't necessarily need to read through this, but I did want to emphasize that we're really looking at adapting existing monitoring programs and leveraging information from existing monitoring programs, but not developing and carrying out monitoring. That's outside of the scope of the CASC and the USGS mission. Our third priority is focused on urban systems, and one of the rationales for that is the importance of urban areas in the Northeast region. And also, this is part of a larger effort to better reach underserved communities. So within this research priority, we're looking at research and assessments that can inform adaptation of fish, wildlife, and their habitats, specifically in urban landscapes. We're also interested in looking at urban landscapes as part of the broader landscape and the role that they play in landscape scale resiliency under a changing climate. And finally, we're also interested in different urban resilience strategies around how we do disaster recovery, green infrastructure, nature-based solutions, and specifically looking at co-benefits for fish and wildlife habitat with these other urban resilience goals and approaches. And then our last priority is focused on invasive fish, wildlife, and insects and pests and pathogens as it relates to climate change. And the Northeast CASC has funded a lot of excellent work around invasive plants. So we're looking to round out our research portfolio and look more at these other invasive species in the landscape. So, and I can also share these slides, and these are all written out in a lot more detail in the solicitation. But the last thing I'll mention is that we did emphasize some cross-cutting themes, including stronger efforts at engaging diverse partners and diverse stakeholders. And we specifically, not a second in terms of priority, but we also really emphasized better engaging tribal nations and tribal organizations across all of the priorities. And I wanted to thank Casey for all the efforts he's done at outreaching the RFP, as well. Our Northeast and Southeast CASC has done the same. So we're trying to both emphasize it in the RFP and then also do more directed outreach, both within the CASC network and beyond. And then finally, our other cross-cutting themes are looking more at social and economic dimensions of climate adaptation strategies. And that's a relatively new area that's being emphasized in a lot of the climate adaptation science centers. And then we have our themes that we've always emphasized around really doing a good job at co-production, outreach, helping translate the science into tools and actionable information, and really engaging partners, not just when you're designing the project and then at the end, but really throughout the entire cycle of research. And then, of course, we still have the focused on species of greatest conservation need, species that might be considered for ESA listing, and fish, wildlife, and habitats of economic and cultural importance. So I think, hopefully that wasn't too fast, but folks are welcome to reach out to me and I can share the slides. And we did record our webinar, but I haven't double checked if it's posted, so I can check on that. So if folks have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thanks, Catherine.
And yeah, Casey might have a little something to add too.
Oh yeah, Casey.
Oh, I just wanted to introduce myself to the group. So I'm Sara Smith's counterpart in the East, the Tribal Climate Science Liaison with United South and Eastern Tribes, USET. So I work real closely with Dr. Catherine Smith on the Northeast CASC. And please feel free to reach out to me as well if you've got ideas or some things that your tribal nation community are working on. What I do with that is take that information to the Northeast CASC and principal investigators that are maybe doing similar work. Information can also go the other way too. Sometimes what has occurred is principal investigators from the Northeast CASC will contact me and they'll say, you know, I'm doing a project on brook trout or something like that. Do you know of tribal nations where this would also be a concern? And so part of the work I try to do is to, as a liaison, is to assist in helping some of these partnerships grow and develop. So I will put my contact info in the chat. Thank you.
And Casey, I'm so sorry I forgot to introduce you. I'm new to this group, so I didn't know if you already knew everyone really well.
No worries. I think most people know me, but there might be some people new to the group. So I just wanted to introduce, especially for those that are joining for the first time. Cool, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Casey, for that. And Casey and I will actually be switching off as facilitator for the quarterly meetings, as we're both liaisons within this larger Northeast region. So he'll be the facilitator for our next call in May. We have about 1 more minute until we need to switch over to our next presenter. Are there any immediate questions for Catherine or Olivia or Casey? Okay, and all their information will be included in the notes as well. So we can move on to our next presenter, Hannah Panci. She's the climate change scientist for the Great Lakes Indian Fish and Wildlife Commission out of Wisconsin. And so I will turn it over to her, and I believe I have given you host ability to share.
Okay, great. Bonjour, everybody. Hannah, Indigenous, Ironwood, and Dunjaba, Gawin and Dunu Damasi, Glyphwick and Denoki. I'm not a tribal member, but I like to use the teeny tiny bit of Ojibwe that I do know when I'm giving presentations. And so I'll share my screen. All right, can you guys all see that?
Yep.
Okay, so today I'm sharing our whole climate change program's work on this climate change vulnerability assessment. So I guess I'm doing the talking, but Rob Kroll's on here. He's done a lot of work on this. Melanie Montano, I think, was supposed to be here today, but couldn't be. Has done a lot of work, and we have a couple other members in our climate change program that have done a lot of work on this. So the goal of our vulnerability assessment is to combine scientific and traditional ecological knowledge. Pictured here is the first version that we released in 2018. We're calling it version 1, so it had 11 beings that we looked at, and we're going to publish version 2 sometime in 2021, and that will have about 68 beings in the assessment. Okay. So, Glyphwick, in case you don't know us, our office is on the Bad River Reservation in northern Wisconsin there. We're an intertribal agency, and we support our 11 Ojibwe member tribes in the implementation of treaty rights that they've retained to hunt, fish, and gather off reservation in those 4 ceded territories shown on the map. Let's see. So as we all know, tribes depend on treaty resources to meet spiritual, ceremonial, medicinal, subsistence, and economic needs. And tribes will be disproportionately affected by climate change. So this is just a few pictures of
your mic is doing it again, Hannah.
Oh no.
I wonder, would it be easier to call in perhaps?
Oh, I could try that.
All right. So I sound okay now?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry about that, everyone. I'm not usually the one with the Zoom problem, so I guess I have to take a turn. Okay, so basically, so I have some audio clips in here. Just another thing that might not work. But let me play an audio clip for you guys from one of the people we interviewed for this project, and I think he can sum it up better than I can.
2 weeks before it freezes is when the tula bees hit, and they run until it freezes during that 2-week time. So if the climate change makes this 2-week thing start 2 months ahead of time, a lot of my people back in the day are the ones of us that like to do this are going to get messed up big time. Climate change did that. The walleyes, the northerns and suckers, if they don't see them things up there when they're supposed to, that messes up all the way down the line somewhere, huh? What was the other one? Then 4 times and snow comes. If it only comes 3 times now, a lot of these stories that we tell in Chippewa country to our children to help relate these things, I become a liar, or maybe a bullshitter, whatever you want to say. When I try to explain something to them in a good way that'll give them life, they're going to believe me. Yeah, you told me you're going to do this 4 times, but you're wrong. But my grandma and grandpas before them, they know this. And that's why they're still here, because they didn't have no weatherman, TV, or radio to do these things or show you. So that's how climate change, what I see about it, it affects our stories. It affects when we hunt, where we fish. And it has a great deal of effect to us.
Oh, could you guys all hear that audio code okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay, so the goals of our vulnerability assessment, a couple of them. First, use a holistic approach to assess the vulnerability of over 60 beings to climate change. And promote recognition that Anishinaabe knowledge and worldview provide important and needed contributions to the understanding of resource vulnerability. So here are the 68 beings we chose for the assessment. These are all beings of special cultural significance or chosen based on a round of initial interviews we did with tribal members. So these were beings that were mentioned most frequently. You know, all beings are considered important in Ojibwe culture, but we had to limit our list at a certain point. So we've included each with their Ojibwe name here. And so just a little bit about how we structured the assessment. So we used scientific ecological knowledge and traditional ecological knowledge. All of us, although Melanie did most of these, did interviews with tribal elders and harvesters in all of our 11 member tribal communities. And these were semi-directed interviews, so they were given a list of questions and they could either choose to answer the question or share other knowledge. And so those interviews have been going on for a long time. We also used the Climate Change Vulnerability Index produced by NICRN to assess the vulnerability of each being. It's an Excel-based tool that's useful for comparing a large suite of beings and determining which aspects of their natural history make them more vulnerable to changes. So we did use scientific literature in this tool, but we are also able to use information directly from the interviews in the vulnerability index in order to get different vulnerability rankings. So we incorporated both of those in our results, and we also included a lot of quotes, some of which you'll hear today, but quotes and other knowledge directly in our results, along with the information from the vulnerability index. So just a quick snapshot of our results. This is showing average vulnerability score. So on the higher the box plot is, the higher the vulnerability score is, and these are grouped into categories of beings commonly used by the Ojibwe, so crawlers, flyers, swimmers, four-leggeds, and plants. And you can see that swimmers and plants, their boxes are higher, meaning they overall as groups were more vulnerable than the others. Overall, 40% of the beings we looked at were categorized as highly or extremely vulnerable. So highly means their range is likely to decrease significantly by mid-century. And these are all the different beings in each of the groups in that category. And then plenty were also extremely vulnerable. Their range is extremely likely to decrease or even disappear by mid-century. A lot of these are really culturally important beings that have Ojibwe people have held relationships with for centuries. And the most vulnerable being, Menominee or wild rice. So pretty much every way a being can be vulnerable to climate change, Menominee is vulnerable. It's not a very good disperser. It has heavy seeds. It's really sensitive to increases in temperature. It's sensitive to changes in the water level and a lot of different disturbances. It needs ice in the winter to knock back any beings that might compete with it and to allow seeds to germinate in the spring. It's also sensitive to some pathogens. It has limited genetic variation. So all of those different things.
And all this year, them little worm, before it turns into the brown moth, he'll eat that rice and then mold gets in the middle of that rice stalk. The whole stalk would be I wouldn't say it was the best rice no more because it has that, and that's because it gets more hotter and more moist.
So just one example of some of the knowledge that was shared related to climate change about Menominee. So we have a lot more that was shared. Okay, so the most frequently mentioned beings in the interviews were also among the most vulnerable. So these beings were the most frequently mentioned. I switched the axis here, so less vulnerable will be on the left, more vulnerable will be on the right, and the bar represents the best case to worst case scenario. So Menominee is at the top, wild rice, followed by wabu, snowshoe hare, and a lot of those beings, 6 or 7 beings that were the most frequently mentioned are also quite vulnerable to climate change. We also put together a word cloud from all of our interviews. We're still in the process of transcribing some of these, so this might change a little bit, but a word cloud, you've probably all seen one, but the bigger the word is, the more it's appeared in the interviews. So knowledge holders have shared teachings, stories, songs, other knowledge related to climate change, observations from their own or their family's experiences, a lot of conversations about increases or decreases in different beings and environmental changes over time, a lot of conversations about human degradation of the environment, cultural fire, indicators for when to harvest a certain being, a lot of different cultural practices, the original treaty and the importance of offering tobacco, cultural suppression, and all of those topics are tied into climate change. So it's all related, but one way of trying to display our interviews. Okay, and here I'm just going to let some of the speakers speak for themselves. I think I have an audio clip from each of our 11-member tribes here. So here we go.
But what's happening is we're just polluting the world. We're killing the Mother Earth. That's why things are happening like the way it is today. We're killing everything. We're killing the water. We're killing the Mother Earth.
For everything you do, you gotta have a good heart. Like all the traditional things that we do, like from sugar bush to wild rice to planting gardens to planting tobacco or whatever you're doing, you have to have that a whole heart respect for it, because it's given to us by the Creator. He's making it possible, and all you have to do is you have to put the effort into it.
Yeah, it's like you don't really see any big birches now. Anything that big is usually dead. I wonder if there's something to do with the climate, or it's an insect killing it, or I know we were out getting some birch bark for my uncle. There must be a worm that gets under the bark and puts marks in the bark, and he don't like that.
Choke cherries, we used to have a whole bunch of them down these roads here. They used to be just black choke cherries. I didn't see that much last year.
According to the little bit I know about wild rice, you have to have that water. It's got to be just right in order for, otherwise you're going to drown it.
And so I always think about that, because if all life has a spirit, what about everything else that is not getting the focus or attention by us right now? It's really interesting, and I'm always curious about what that means for the future, our actions now as humans and what we're trying to do on the landscape. Well, just like with climate change.
You're having a shorter season because right now we're getting our spring a whole month ahead of time what it normally should be. 3 weeks to a month, we're ahead of that, and the trees are ready to go. Because it goes right back to the goddamn atmosphere that we're warming up. the country warming up, so and that tells whatever nature does, that tells them trees to start sapping or whatever.
Strawberries, like I don't even see them. I don't see them.
Strawberries anymore.
I haven't seen them in years. I don't know, and I think it's because the season is usually in June, but it's always so cold lately that I don't see them. I haven't seen wild strawberries, and I don't even know.
I used to get a lot of birch bark in the spring, and that's changed through time because of the heat. 11 o'clock, I used to be still out in deep woods and taking that bark off. Now when I try to do it, I got to go real early in the morning because around 11 o'clock now, it gets so hot from the sun rays that one side of that birch tree will stick, and I'll have these marks on it, dry marks.
Yeah, I think one of the, when thinking about stories from like my father and the snow, goodness, like you would literally get snowed in. People would get snowed in, like, and worried that they would not be able to get out of their door because the snow just got so deep, so quick. And now, I mean, I don't even really have to wear my boots, my snow boots, very often anymore.
Sandhill cranes, we never used to see them. They are in abundance now. We see them a lot. Right now they're going to be gathering together to make their trip back.
Okay, so that was just a teeny tiny fraction of the knowledge that's been shared. A lot of it is really deep knowledge rooted in really specific locations and considered alongside the results from that climate change vulnerability index, which gives us information about beings in the region as a whole. Now we can look at both general vulnerability and the vulnerability of different beings in different places. So many of these interviewees may not have talked a lot about climate change using those exact words, but so many of the changes they mentioned are related to climate change. So there are many of these resources of tribal interest that are vulnerable to climate change. Many can be expected to decrease in abundance or possibly even disappear from the ceded territories by mid-century. And the treaty rights that our member tribes retain can't move with them. So both of these knowledge sources really help to inform our overall knowledge of climate change vulnerability. We have kind of a breadth and a depth of knowledge when we use both of them. Tribal knowledge holds so many answers to climate change adaptation. It's essential to use this knowledge to move forward in climate change adaptation. Ojibwe people have been living off the land for thousands of years and constantly adapting to changes and will continue to do so. And I have one more audio clip that summarizes that sentiment.
Thousands of years. My people have been living here like this on this land, Same animals, fish, birds, just about, plants, water. All this time we're eating and surviving, off the earth. And we're still doing it today somewhat, So, to me, that's a lot of my people observing good years, bad years, good times and bad times of the earth. When human beings aren't too good, when they are good, all these things that goes down into our traditional ways. So everything you see that's still growing here, because we wanted it that way. That's the way God put it here. Let's keep it that way.
So Miigwech Bizendawi, thank you for listening to me. She Miigwech to everyone else that's worked on this project and to all of the elders and harvesters and other knowledge holders who've contributed knowledge. It's just an honor to be able to listen to it. And we hope our team is using it in a good way to help us take care of those who take care of us. That's all I have. Thank you.
Yongo, Hannah, that was great. Are there any questions for Hannah? I don't know if you want to try to put your webcam back on or not.
I just want to second what Casey was saying, that the all those knowledge keepers and elders and the voices along with the map was really, really cool. And Miigwech for your work and everybody's work on that.
Hi, this is Carol Ann Sonderegger from the Grand Traverse Band. I was just wondering what kind of effort went for organizing, gathering the tribal ecological knowledge as far as interviewing the elders. How, I guess, I'm just wondering how all that was arranged.
That's a good question. Is Melanie's not on here, is she?
No, I don't think she is.
No. Okay.
I mean, having Melanie Montano on our team played a really huge part in that, because she has those connections with just about all of the Glyphic tribes, maybe all of them. And she has that relationship with people. And that's the biggest thing, is being able to create those relationships and maintain them over time. And then the other piece was that it was all the outreach was done very traditionally, using a SAMA, talking about our intentions and just making it clear that the knowledge that they were giving us was going to be used in a specific way. It wasn't going to be shared without their consent. It remained their property. And that, any future use of it, we would come back to them and make sure we're still good to do that.
Got it. Thank you. I was hoping to do something similar with our tribe. I just didn't know how to go about reaching out to our elders. What would be the best way to get information? So that's helpful. Thank you.
And that's exactly the type of questions that we hope that this network will inspire, is learning and sharing from each other about our different projects and how to go about the work that we're trying to do. So Miigwech for that question.
Are there any other questions for Hannah? I had a question about the audio clips. Is that something that's going to be part of like the online version of the vulnerability assessment, or will they be more like text boxes? Or
Yeah, that's a good question. Right now we're just working on the written version, and so we have a lot of quotes just included in there, but when we do have an online version, it would be nice to include those, because it's way better to hear it than to read it.
Yeah, I thought that part
Good
was
idea.
really cool. Okay, well, thank you again, Hannah. And if you want to put your contact information in the chat, if people do have any questions to follow up with, please feel free to do so.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Thanks again. So we have one more thing on the agenda for today, and that was other business. So I wanted to invite Rob to talk. I know he's been talking a little bit in the background, giving some jokes. But yeah, I'll hand it over to you.
Sure. This is just kind of to put a little bug in everybody's ear, maybe generate a little interest for something coming in the future. So Hannah talked a little bit about Glyphic and our member tribes and the work that we do for them. And the tribes have a memorandum of understanding with the Forest Service, because the bulk of the treaty rights harvesting and gathering and hunting happens on Forest Service land. And we have an annual meeting with the Forest Service. And this year, a big question came up about sugar maple, how to maintain that relationship with that being going forward when it's going to be affected by climate change, whether or not there are other trees that would serve the same purpose for harvesting sap. And Chris Swanston from NIACS, who was really instrumental in the development of the tribal climate adaptation menu, and I were doing this presentation, and we kind of got marching orders to start looking at this through the context of the tribal climate adaptation menu. So we put a small group together, mostly TAM team and people who have been through workshops, and we're beginning to talk about what would a maple-focused TAM workshop look like, and how would we make it accessible and valuable to people throughout the range of sugar maple in the US and in Canada. So in our initial couple of meetings, we've been talking about starting off, in a really good way by sharing stories and probably doing multiple story sharing sessions. So that's kind of where we're at now, is just in very early planning stages. We'll be looking to add some partners into this effort moving forward, looking for some funding and just figure out the best way to go about this. So like I said, this is just kind of a preliminary, very, very preliminary watch for this coming down the road kind of a thing.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, I think something like this within the whole Northeast region would be really great to do. All right. So that's it for our agenda today. I want to thank everyone for joining us for our first quarterly call for the Northeast Indigenous Climate Resilience Network. We hope to have these, quarterly. I do send out a email with updates about every other week or every 3 weeks. So if you're not on that listserv, please let me know. And you can sign up on the website itself to join that listserv. Casey and I put things together to try to encompass the whole Northeast and what's going on and things you should know. Besides that, are there any concluding thoughts from folks on the call today?
Hey Sarah and everyone, this is Casey. Just want to say real quick, I've been doing the notes and we'll be sure to get those out. I'll add to the notes too. We didn't have a chance to cover it, but just to make everyone aware again, the BIA Tribal Resilience Program is another funding source that's out. And I think there's going to be an informational webinar next Monday. So since it'll be a few months since we have our next meeting, I wanted to let everyone know about that, and I will put it in the notes.
Thanks, Casey. Yeah, I forgot to include that as a funding opportunity. That just came out, so you can put it on there.
I have a quick thought, Sarah. Part of what being involved in the council before I really enjoyed were the updates. And so I wonder if in one of the future quarterly meetings, the tribal staff that are on the call could just share like a brief, like keep it to 2 minutes or something, right? That might help get the more two-way.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. Marie and I were just talking about using Jamboard, so maybe we could do that as well so people could put updates on there too. I'm all about the interacting portion, especially in this virtual realm.
I'm only laughing because Robin and I are going to use that in another meeting this afternoon because it's hard. It's hard to interact in a virtual world. But I do, Robin, I completely agree. Like having tribal staff and folks that are working on these projects do a quick update, and it also helps build relationships within the network. as well. So I'm all about those, both of those goals of updating, but then also building the relationships.
All right. Well, Youngo, big thanks to everybody on the call. I'll stop sharing my screen and then stop the recording.